Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of the Union Federation podcast here, not only on the Fandom Podcast Network, but also the BQN Network, as we continue our march on with the final adventure in the final season of Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 8, Labyrinths. I don't think David Bowie is making an appearance on this show, but you never know. But I do have a top-notch crew ready to join me to talk about this latest installment of the final season of Discovery. And first, it always pleasures me to welcome our top-notch counselor. She's a great holographic captain. She's joining, adjusted her schedule so we could record the show just a little bit earlier. It's always wonderful to welcome Amy Nelson back on the Union Federation Starship. Amy, how are you?
I'm doing great. And I just have to quote Tyrell and say, may you find knowledge elsewhere. Love it.
Are you saying you're not bringing the knowledge to the podcast tonight?
Yes, I will not be, because you guys are way smarter than me.
I don't know about that, but somebody who I know is usually pretty on point, and if nothing else, he's doing some top-notch security work, as always. The one and only co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
That was a sick burn, by the way. I like that. That was a good Star Trek burn. By the way, I am not Kevin Reitzel. I'll be known as Lo Rawl. I am the ex-boyfriend of Hyrel, and I've got my own archive right over here. So, if you guys feel free, there's no danger of bringing or anything like that. We've got a really special edition here of Star Trek Next Generation Season 1. So I got some stuff to choose in case you get burned out and you get lost in Hyrel's nice, library. So there we go.
Well, I don't know. I'm just lost in the maze that is this library that I'm going through, but it is going to be a fun time. Again, this is the final season of Discovery, and yeah, it's happening fast, guys. Or Episode 8. We've only got a couple episodes left here on this final adventure for Star Trek Discovery, and of course, like I said, this is Union Federation on the Fandom Podcast Network, and of course also on the BQN Network.
BQN, woo!
Assimilation is just happening more and more every day, and it's just, Amy and the folks at BQN are doing a fantastic job, and they are definitely assimilating all the Star Trek audio.
Yes, I just would like to congratulate Peter for hosting his, officially on the BQN, his online book club this past weekend, and he'll be getting a podcast out with the questions and answers that everyone had. I'm very excited. So that's our newest thing over at BQN.
That is exciting. I'm looking forward to that. And of course, we are in the final season of Discovery as we are in Episode 8, Labyrinths. 2 more to go. This season's kind of felt like it's gone fast. This has not been this one has kept moving. So I'm like, yeah, I don't, what's next? That's the question. What's next? But guys, we are going to be diving deep into the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, which means spoiler alert. We are going, if you have not watched Episode 8 Labyrinths yet, go watch it. Watch the Ready Room. Come back and join us because we are going to have a wonderful conversation about this episode of Star Trek Discovery, which, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. This season has been a joy for me so far. It's been one of the more consistent seasons of Discovery, and I'm enjoying it, and it's a wonderful thing. But guys, let's get into our first away mission. So away mission number 1, as always, we cover what's happened in this episode, give our thoughts, but that always kicks off first with the Admiral's Log. Mr. Reitzel, are you up for doing some Admiral's Log this evening?
I would love to. Appreciate that. Yeah. All right. Admiral's Log episode synopsis for this episode, which is called Labyrinths. Upon Discovery's arrival at the archive, archivist Hyrel leads Burnham to the manuscript purported to contain the last map piece. She also gives Book a cutting of the world route, a priceless piece of his culture following the destruction of his planet. Burnham is transported into a mindscape simulation where she is tested for her worthiness to find the progenitor's technology by an AI in the form of Book, while Book and Raynar fight off attacking Breen forces. Burnham eventually admits that she's driven by her fears of failure and loss, passing the AI's test and earning the location of the map piece. She is also given additional information on how to reach the technology once at the map's destination. After Discovery copies the completed map, Burnham gives it to Rune in exchange for a promise not to destroy the archive. The brain fire on Discovery, and Burnham fakes the ship's destruction. Rune decides to destroy the archive anyway, concerning some of his followers. Maul takes advantage of this discontent and stages a mutiny, killing Rune and uniting the forces behind her plan to resurrect Locke.
Okay, guys, a lot happens in this episode. First of all, first impressions of this episode. Amy, I'm going to start with you. Mute.
Yes, I really like this episode. I think the pacing of this season has been just wonderful. It's been just perfect for me. And even in this episode, we got a good amount of Maul and the Breen, a good amount of getting the next puzzle piece, which we do get. I'm so excited that we have all of the pieces and, some good heartfelt, really self-evaluation of Burnham. And Booker was amazing as this little guide. And the first thing I thought of was, everyone needs to have their inner light moment. And Burnham got hers.
Kevin, what about you? What did you think of the episode this week?
The outfit that Book was wearing is the AI. Pretty snappy, very similar, of course, to Hyrel's, but it kind of reminded me of something that George Carlin would wear in the future, of course, when it came to Bill and Ted's Excellent or Bogus Journey. I thought that was kind of funny. I was actually impressed with the episode on being able to do a lot with this kind of like 3D room they have, or what do they call it? The Star Wars way, kind of like they do
the AR wall.
Yeah, the AR wall, basically. Yeah. I thought it was very clever. We'll talk a little bit about the filming location, of course, of the archive a little bit later. But I thought they did a really good job of us taking us to the Breen ship, and then, obviously utilizing the established Discovery set as well. When they were kind of going around the corridors of the archive, I'm sure some of it was on location. I'm sure some of it was partial set and stuff like that. It was interesting to kind of watch that. The only thing that I was kind of like going like, do you really want to like have a continuous line of salt or whatever it was that she was pouring so she wouldn't get lost? Or do you just kind of like, I would do it like every now and then, because what if you run out, but it seems like it was continuously being I guess replenished or anything. But I was immediately brought into the episode. I was excited about it. But then when it kind of gets into the AI thing, which I liked how it ended out, but it started getting into one of my tropes that I don't like with Star Trek and sci-fi in general, and that is the Mind F episode, if you know what I'm talking about. Is it real or is it not? But then you start to realize, okay, this is an AI, and of course it's going to be Book that's going to, kind of guide her through this thing, stuff like that. So it escaped that for me, which was good. It was good. I loved the moment with Book and the world root thing. I thought that was kind of cool, and it was neat to see him kind of like catch himself there for a moment and see him kind of in a vulnerable emotional state. Because we forget, he's kind of like Princess Leia. He lost his world, and he's really kind of like grasping onto anything that is family or as a reminder of home. And all of us, they either move away from home or have loss from family and stuff like that. We can kind of feel that a little bit. And I thought that was a good thing about this episode.
Yeah, just to jump in real quick to follow up with that, Kevin, you're exactly right. And so many times Star Trek has said, well, they're not following through with, a major event. And we are seeing this with Book and his loss, with Maul, and now with this plant root. And they're just little ties. And you're right. When you move away or lose, you want those just little tiny connections. And sometimes it will put you in a tailspin, and then you have to work through it for a couple of days. And sometimes it's just a nice comfort, so.
It reminds me of how some people retain memories,
Mm.
whether it's old letters, whether it's pictures or something that you got, and everyone kind of does it their own way. And in discovery and stuff like that, sometimes it's something that you don't have, but you found it later, or someone else provided it, like this world route, and I remember having a conversation with my wife about keeping memories, because I have a lot. I obviously, you can tell behind me, I keep a lot of stuff. But it was kind of funny. Just on a side note, when I was in Australia, she brought out this box of stuff she had from middle school and high school. She brought out these diaries. She brought out all this funny stuff, and that's when I began to realize how hard a crush she had on Kevin Bacon. But she pulled out all this cool stuff, that I hadn't heard or hadn't seen, and she hadn't seen in years. And I think that when you have something that creates a memory of home, like this world route thing, I think it was interesting. And there are some things that my wife and I did just recently that I kept, because at the time they meant nothing until the experience happened, and now they mean the world to me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I think that's one of the big things with this episode too, is focusing on the memories and how important they are. And I enjoyed this episode too. When it first started, I was a little bit, not another centered around Burnham episode, but I think in this case they actually pulled it off very well. And I'm going to say this: I think Book might be one of, at least in this current era of Trek, might be the most fleshed out character they've created, completely around. I know an argument can be said for Burnham, but she's been such the focus of the show. Outside of Burnham, Book, the emotional gambit he's been through, the realness of his emotions throughout this run of him being on the show has been outstanding, and David Ajala has done a wonderful job. But the library was a spectacular view piece, and we're going to talk more about that later. I actually loved even had a little battle in there with the Breen. I thought that was kind of neat how they portrayed that, where you didn't necessarily see it happen, but you're seeing it on the Breen projection, and you see it going wrong for the Breen. And I thought that was a very interesting, and just a lot of very cool little things in this episode. And this was one of those episodes where the little things really made this episode stand out, and that I thoroughly enjoyed it. So with that, guys, I do have a little bit of trivia on this episode. So I've got a little Star Trek trivia here. Not a lot, but I found a couple of interesting and fun little things they brought up. First thing, art evolution. The Badlands in Star Trek Deep Space Nine had the appearance of a sort of corridor of storm clouds between which deadly plasma funnels would form. Here it is depicted as a giant chaotic storm of plasma with a stable eye in the center. This reflects the fact that it became even more dangerous after 800 years, enough to inflict heavy damage to more advanced starships. Again, nice touch by Discovery and the writers to realize, hey, enough time's passed. This thing's got to have gotten bigger. And it looked very cool too. Kevin, I think you're gonna like this little piece of trivia that I found, or comparison trope kind of thing that I found. Bond villain stupidity. Defied. Primarch Rune is prepared to provoke the Federation, the other Breen factions, and basically the entire galaxy, because he believes the progenitor technology will make him too powerful to challenge. Yet Maul then points out, well, you don't really have it yet. So one step ahead of himself. And
this guy was a classic pompous ass. You love to see his up and comings there. That was great.
Yeah, you have outlived your usefulness. Once Run has the clues, he declares he has no need of Maul and tries to kill her. Fortunately for her, his blatant disregard for Breen culture or oaths makes his lieutenant pull a gun on him, and Maul uses that moment to kill him instead. Yeah, bad guy egos.
Can I say something about that real quick? That was a really cool scene, and I don't know if it was done if the character of Burnham did this on purpose to kind of get to Maul in a way, not in a bad way, but to make him make that oath in front of everyone else where he was at, so that he makes the oath. And then when he breaks the oath, it really shows his full colors. And that's when Maul was able to take advantage, call him out, and then unite the rest of the Breen with her. I thought that was kind of a cool little thing. I don't know if that's something that Burnham was trying to do, but I like the way that it worked out.
Well, this other trope I had will also lead us into our first discussion point of the episode. Secret test of character. The test for the final clue is a mental prison that requires a specific action to escape, but the test program can't reveal what the test is other than explaining when the subject is on the wrong track. When Burnham finally gives up and admits her failings, it turns out to be the correct answer. Anyone who would protect the progenitors' technology must be able to be honest about themselves, even those things they'd rather not admit to. Which, guys, kind of brings us into our first point of discussion that I want to have for this episode, the journey into the mind, because this episode was obviously about Burnham's journey to find this clue, but looking into her own mind, we learn in this episode the path to the next clue is a journey through one's own mind, in this case Burnham. How did we feel about the aspect of that story, and also what it might mean for the future of Book and Burnham? Because not only was Burnham finding things to admit to herself, she was finally dealing with something that's been kind of the underlying aspect of part of the season. It's her relationship with Book and her not admitting to herself certain aspects. So I'm very curious what you guys thought of this journey that Burnham was put on through this episode, Amy.
I wasn't that impressed by it, probably because we already know Burnham's struggles with the things that she admitted in this episode, because we've learned them from previous seasons. I didn't feel like I learned anything more. Of course, she wants to do good. Of course, the mission is always paramount in her mind. Of course, she's afraid of failure. We're all afraid of failure. That's not, for me, it was just a part of the clue. It was like, okay, previous clues, you had to learn about the culture, like in Whistle Speak, and learn. So like each clue is a test, and this was the test, but I didn't hate it, but I didn't feel like, oh my gosh, I know Burnham so much better. She's had this aha moment. Every season she has an aha moment, and it was beautiful. I just wasn't blown away by it. What did you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I didn't like the path to it. And I'll explain, because I liked that as an audience, you like to follow along with the clues to find the end game, whatever they're looking for, to see either if you can figure it out yourself or just be wowed while you're on with the adventure with them. And I got kind of excited because, first of all, she's looking at those drawers that remind me of those old library Dewey Decimal card systems, where you can look up books and stuff like that. And I'm like, you could have spent 5 minutes just fiddling through that thing and I would have been happy with it. But then she kind of, tries not to get lost in the corridors by pouring that sand salt stuff or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden she just sits down. She's exasperated. She got lost. And then she kind of starts, either admitting stuff or whatever. It kind of reminds me of that. When it was like, okay, she just had to sit down and be honest with herself. Really, she didn't have to take us around in circles and show us some cool stuff, right? So I felt a little like that really wasn't worth the ride. And it kind of reminded me of it was kind of like basically when Data was playing, and what we used to call them was the Chinese handcuffs, the little things where you get his finger stuck in. And the trick is just to relax and push in and it releases. That's kind of what I was thinking when she was just like sitting there going, I don't know what to do, blah, 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 blah. But so I was a little disappointed on the adventure to get to that moment to find herself, when she could have just sat down to start off with and just go, here's what's up.
I'm a little different with you guys, but what I liked about it was the fact that you had to see her adjust, because she was trying to find the clue within the maze. And I think one of the things for Burnham that has been something that's changed, especially when you go back from season 1 to now, is yes, she's always had these aha moments, but the one thing she hasn't really been not great about is admitting her own faults or being to herself. And I think here, realizing that she puts all this pressure on herself, and just realizing that, you know what, I can't do it all, and having that kind of aha moment, not only with that, but with her relationship with Book, because I think that's why Book is the Avatar, is because that relationship and what's been going on with that has been what has been eating at her a lot this season. So I think they use that as kind of a way to start crossing the reconnecting those two, and they show it right after she wakes up and she sees that Book has been shot and injured, and it's a different kind of concern she's shown than she has earlier in the season.
Hmm.
And so I think they kind of use that as maybe a way to start that relationship kind of reconnecting. So I like that aspect of it. And the fact that they made this about something where it's about what she is. And it is, if somebody's going in there, just going into that clue, a lot of people are just going to be going, oh, I'm the person to do it. But by admitting your own faults makes you a better protector of that technology because you have humility. You understand your nature.
It's kind of like the parallel story of what Captain America is. You know, he was
I
the
think
one
there's a
that
little bit.
had nothing and he understood what it was like to have nothing until he was somebody and he knew not to be corrupted by the power.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that they bring up with Captain America, and that is like the power. You roll with the power instead of just taking it for yourself. And I think that's what they really were playing out here. And I thought that was kind of interesting how they did that through the mindscape instead of it being a physical challenge or something physical they had to find. But the next thing I want to talk about here for this episode, guys, is something that I absolutely love, which is the library, the archive. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you. I was kind of getting a little sci-fi Harry Potter feel from this archive. There's something about this archive that just kind of could up. Maybe it's the lighting of it and the coloring of it and just how it was designed. Like I could see this thing in like Harry Potter too. And I thought this was one of the coolest sets that they've had. And even more cool is the location they used because they filmed this and converted this location at the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library at the University of Toronto, which is like the third largest rare books library. And I mean, the fact that they even let them in to do this, considering the kind of books that are inside of this library, which they talk about in the Ready Room episode. I love this. It felt so cool. Kevin?
Amy, when you were in Scotland, did you have a chance to visit that really nice old I think it's in Scotland, like multi-tier level library? Was it you that
Is it on the Edinburgh University of Edinburgh?
I think so, yeah.
Yes, then yes.
Yeah, because I didn't get a chance to go to that, but I think when you were on your trip, I think you went and did that. And I love old libraries like that. I love seeing like old fancy houses and castles that have their own library. But Kyle, you said you were getting kind of a Harry Potter vibe. I was actually getting a Star Wars episode 2 vibe with their Jedi archives, and it's like, if the system is not in the archive, it doesn't exist. I'm like,
Well, I mean, okay, so I've got up on our screen for those of you watching on YouTube. We've got the curator there, and we've also got a picture of the archive. And I'm sorry, that's just like a sci-fi Hogwarts to me.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I see where you're getting at with that. But yeah, that was an impressive thing. And what I'm very curious about, though, is they normally don't. Can you go back to the picture of the actual archives there?
Yeah, absolutely.
That they filmed on location. What I'm very curious about is we find out later that they don't allow filming in this location. But they did for this. But what I'm curious about is how much of it that we saw was actually the location and how much did they kind of like, let's film here, and then let's kind of like digitize it in our digital room or whatever like that. Like all the hallways, was that actually, I believe those might have been sets that were built, but there were certain parts of it maybe that they kind of scanned and they were able to like duplicate or make it larger than it actually was. With it not allowing a lot of filming at all at that location, but they did for this. I'm curious how they did that with using some sci-fi magic.
See, that's my question exactly, because I'm looking at this archive and going, there is no place on earth that looks like this and has all this many books. And if this was from different cultures, wouldn't there be different shapes and sizes and not even books? But whatever, we will put that aside. And so I'm always wondering, I'm like, is this CGI all? And I don't want to see that. So I'm with you. It sort of almost detracts when it's so elaborate, and like the engine room when it's so deep and so big, and
Right.
it does take me out of it, because I'm like, this just isn't, I don't know. Yeah, real.
I think obviously the height of the books was all kind of in the volume kind of thing, kind of like what they did a couple seasons ago when they had the meeting at Federation headquarters, and it was a long tower that they were all in on different levels. But I just think I think they did a beautiful job with this. I thought the set was beautiful. I mean, if you
Yes.
watch in the episode of the Red Room, you actually see, like, I know that the where the table is in the hexagon, that's actually in that building.
Yeah.
And then they added sets around it. But I think, like, the books walls themselves were expanded upon to make it look that enormous cavernous look to it. At first, I did feel like, okay, yeah, they're maybe using the volume here, and you can tell, but after a while, it kind of just all started to meld together for me a little bit better. So I really enjoyed that. And you just talk about a place you would just like to get lost in. I mean, all those different cultures in that universe, and what else they have. Because I'm thinking this is a much bigger facility than what we just saw here, because they also have artifacts sections probably, and
Mm.
things like that. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably in a different location. Yeah.
I got a question for you guys. Just kind of a fun question related to this. We all there's a lot of course, bookstores that aren't around anymore. And we still have like Barnes and Nobles, and I think there's still Books a Million and stuff like that. Um, it's funny. I always ask people, like, do you miss those? And if so, like, what section did you go to first? For me, it was always the sci-fi section. And then maybe if they had like a game and toy section. But if I were to come to this location, I'd be go like, okay, where's the audiobook section?
in this case, it would probably be the holodeck section.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, that is going to take us into the third topic I want to talk about, which is Maul in this episode, because Maul and the Breen, it was very interesting. And now the question I think that at least I'm asking, and I'm curious to see what you guys think: are they shaping it up that Maul is the big bad of the season? All of a sudden, she's in charge, and yes, and is she the bad because she's so single-mindedly on this one aspect, which is bringing Locke back to life? And does that make her? Is that going to make her the bad guy kind of by default? Kind of like what happened with Book last season, where Book was in such grief that he was doing things that were not right. With Maul, though, you can kind of see at the end of that episode, and to me, she looked like she was having a little bit of that power trip look going on, Kevin.
Yeah, and she has to. Her character has to basically. Um, when someone takes power over people, they have to prove themselves. They have to make the previous power holder non-existent for a reason, or dispel their credibility, or kill them, or whatever it is. And we've seen a little bit of that, and we've seen that on her journey here. And it started with this marriage that she had before Locke apparently passed away. We'll find out if that stays true or not. But her calling out, Breen culture and stuff like that, because I know that she was questioned about that, and I think that, and also too, when she surreptitiously kind of talks to the guard next to her, saying, you're gonna let him do that. I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I mean, when she's kind of talking to him and says stuff. With the connection, whether or not she grasps onto it to Book or not, that's what I'm kind of curious about, because if they do come to a like, does she turn good? I don't know. That's I'm kind of curious to see what happens there, because right now the power structure of the Breen is in question. If she were to then turn and go to Locke, and then what happens with the Breen? So it's interesting. That's the thing in my mind that I find fascinating, is what's going to happen with that dichotomy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Kyle, you bring up a interesting question comparing Maul to Booker last season, because he, paired up with Aurelio, was that his name?
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah.
Aurelio.
And became sort of the quote unquote bad guy because But with Maul, I feel like she has accepted Breen culture. She married a Breen. She knows the Breen. She has no relationship with Starfleet. Maybe
Right.
a little bit, but it wasn't good because of her father. And she has disavowed everything from that. So when she like blurbed out, these guys have the progenitor, and she goes to the Breen, and now she's like taken over control. It's because she has a familiarity and knows what to expect. I think her fear and why she's not going to Starfleet, she has no idea what to expect. And so you're going to take the thing that you know instead of the thing that you don't know. And she is making seriously bold moves every single episode. And I am all for it.
Yeah.
So here's a point I want to bring up too and see what you guys think too, because the way the relationship between Maul and Locke has been this season, I've always kind of felt like Locke was kind of the thing that kept her grounded. That maybe was even a little bit of her own conscience. Because if Maul unchecked, I feel like she could go off a lot farther than Locke would. And I'm curious to see if, she's so blinded by her mission, but she's also doesn't have Locke there to kind of be her conscience and kind of keep her reined in just a little bit and keep her grounded. And I'm just wondering if that's something, especially in the final 2 episodes, now that she has this power. We were talking about it earlier with Burnham, where she admitted her thing. If Maul's the opposite side of the coin of Burnham, where Burnham is not afraid to admit her failures and it realizes that's what got her the final clue, where Maul is just, she doesn't care. She's just like, I have this for one purpose and one purpose only, and I'm going to do whatever I have to do to reach that purpose, which is really kind of not what the progenitor tech is supposed to be about. So I'm curious to see what you guys kind of think of that aspect and her not having Locke right now affecting how she would act.
I kind of feel like Locke would be the reasoning thing in her brain. I don't know if he would approve of the method that she's going through, because you kind of got a feeling that Locke was, even though in death he was kind of accepting it, but there's something about Locke that the impression that I got was like, I know that he loves her and that he wants the best for her, but I'm wondering if we're going to get a kind of Star Trek come to Jesus moment with her and realize maybe this isn't the right thing to do. And then she turns, maybe she'll let, the power get to her and it'll be her demise. Who knows? But whatever it is, I'm liking the ride here. And I think it's a good thing to see.
Amy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree.
There we go.
Kyle, before we move on, I did want to give a shout out to another crew member of the Discovery here. That it was a moment that I thought was really cool, because we've always talked about how we don't get enough of the rest of the Discovery crew. But I really like that moment of Lieutenant Commander Jen Reese inside on the captain's chair, played by, is it Patrick Quachun? Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved how he took command of that chair, and the way that Patrick just kind of embodied that moment and was given the orders, of course, but then was able to dole them out and make his own orders, and to the rest of the crew. I just thought that was a great moment for that character, and knowing a little bit about him and his love for starships now. This is the type of thing, Star Trek writers, that we love to see more, because it makes us ask as fans, I want more. Can I have more of this character? Also, too, it's great discussion for when these actors meet fans. What would you have done if you could have had your own show? Or what if you had, that type of thing. That moment, even though it was fast, only because it seems like they're like, okay, let's only give 2 minutes to the rest of the crew. Let's doll them out, and let's have them say the stuff. But I just want to give a shout out to Patrick's portrayal of that. And I'm really liking his character of what they're giving us so far.
I got to say, too, as part of that, dude had the captain sit position down tight.
Yeah, he did. He was just like, yeah, this is my chair now, until he comes back.
Yeah.
Until Burnham comes back. So yeah. But I loved it. That was a great little scene for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that it's the one thing we have from day one talked about is the lack of bridge crew development, and it was nice to get those little moments. But with
Do
that,
you
guys, go ahead,
sorry.
Amy.
Do you think that, I mean, obviously it has been missing Owo, Detmer, Saru, these middle sections episodes. Do you think that we will see them at the wrap-up episode?
I
If they're
hope
not
so.
there, if they're not there, I think it would be a crime. I mean, to me, Kevin, you'll understand this. I think that would be just as much of a crime as if the fact we did not get our moment of the three main Star Wars characters together in the sequel trilogy. I think
Yeah,
that's
I
it
agree.
would be just as much of a crime.
And for Star Trek Discovery, I think too, that would be just even a bigger crime if we don't see Book and Burnham hanging out on Risa. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Taking a much needed vacation and getting to know each other.
There we go. Okay, guys, with that, we're going to transport into our second away mission and talk some Ready Room. Okay, this week's episode of the Ready Room, Wil Wheaton was joined by none other than Cleveland Booker himself, David Ajala. They talked about his character's relationship with Michael Burnham, as well as the adventures he had playing Book on Star Trek. Plus, they did discuss the real-life location of the galaxy's best library, the Eternal Gallery and Archive. Guys, it is always great to see David Ajala on the screen and in the Ready Room. He brings such an earnest and honesty to it, and he told some great stories. Kevin, you mentioned one that was the highlight for me was when he's talking about his relationship with Patrick Stewart and how that Patrick Stewart was his entryway into Star Trek.
Yeah, they had met doing some I guess was it Shakespeare play or doing some theater together regarding Shakespeare. And that's how they met. And it was really nice to see David talk about how Patrick talking to him, not really knowing much about Star Trek, and how much Star Trek meant to Patrick. And that was really, really huge. And I thought that was a really cool thing and a cool story for him to share. And I feel too that he is also very thankful for the opportunity to work on Discovery. That was the impression that I got from him as well, meeting Star Trek fans. And the thing that his character on screen and talking or hearing him talk in person, I thought was kind of cool, is it makes me want to learn more about David more and see him in more roles. This guy, I just see, to use a corny term, the galaxy wide open for him. I see him getting bigger roles. I see him becoming a bigger star. And the fact that he is now tied to the Star Trek universe even makes it better, because that once you get into Star Trek, you're with it. And fans are going to, not only fans of him are going to follow him through his career and see what else he's done. Like I said, I always do the throwback. What in-person appearances are so important for these people, not just financially, but also for them and the fans, knowing that, yes, they may appreciate his role on Star Trek, but if they go and talk about other stuff. And one of the things that I always tell people is when you meet a star that you really like for whatever, event they're supporting there, whether it's Star Trek or Star Wars, if you can go up to them saying, "Hey, I saw this movie you did in 1982. It meant the world to me." They love that stuff. They know that you've done your homework. They appreciate stuff that maybe is not brought up in panels for whatever convention that they're at. And I just, I'm kind of, thinking that this guy has got a lot ahead of him. And that was the impression I got out of this Ready Room interview.
Amy, what about you? What did you pull out of the Ready Room?
Yeah, he is wonderful in person. I did see him on the cruise, and I was at the airport in Orlando flying home, and I think I told you guys I got COVID after the cruise, my very first time. So I had to pick up some lozenges at the bookstore that I was in at the airport, and I'm checking out, and there's David Ajala walking in, and he's stopping and looking. And we're like face to face. I look at him, he looks at me, and I'm not good at recognizing people unless they're like on stage. And I'm like, that looks like David Ajala. And he could see, I swear, he could see that I had a question mark. And then my eyes got big, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's David Ajala. And he's watching me this whole time. And he just sort of smiled, and I gave him a nod, but I didn't want to approach him because I was not feeling well. But
was he smiling, or was he checking you out?
Hey, I wouldn't mind if he was checking me out.
Guy, that's funny because I would have said something, but there's times when you gotta know. When there's times you gotta know, you gotta let him leave him alone.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
He had just spent a week with the fans, so I wasn't gonna bug him anymore.
That's
but
cool.
From the Ready Room, I was super impressed, which I'm super impressed with everyone who says it, and you hear it over and over again, how amazing SMG, Sonequa Martin Green is, and what a lovely growing experience, what a lovely recording and filming. Like everyone who talks about Sonequa Martin Green always praises her. I know that's the thing to do, but they say it with so much heart. And when he was describing, when SMG was, getting into character, and like she was that emotionally invested into that scene where she broke down and realized her faults, like that was real. And he was like, I witnessed that. And go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I just wanted to jump on what you're saying. One of the things that I like about Ready Room is obviously you have the interview with the main actors, right? And then you have maybe a segment on the behind the scenes of the props or whatever it is. But the thing that I think what the show does really well is that when they're interviewing the stars, while they're talking or while Wil is asking questions, they're showing behind the scenes filming of that episode or on set without really announcing that they're doing it. And I loved the in-between take scenes that we were seeing on the set of the library. Mm-hmm. And then you see Sonequa just kind of sitting down while the crew is kind of walking around getting stuff set up. And she's kind of like laughing at something. Those little candid moments, I think, are really cool that we get from the Ready Room.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, those little clips. And I was right with you when I saw that like card catalog. That made me excited too. But yeah, seeing her walk through the books, I'm like, okay, this I know was in the actual library. But the big shots, that just throws me out of it.
One of the things I like too about that discussion is he talks about both how him and Sonequa have this love for Shakespeare, and just the awe they were in of seeing these original Shakespeare books, and they actually got to handle a couple of them, with the gloves and everything like that. And just go ahead, Kevin.
No, Kyle, you finish.
Well, just the general appreciation David has for not only being on Trek, but the fans and understanding what this experience is. And I would like when he's talking about Patrick Stewart and seeing him at San Diego Comic-Con, and they run into each other, both they're promoting Trek, and how it changed their discussions and things they could talk about.
There was an opportunity though that I felt was missed in this episode, not the Ready Room, but in the actual episode itself. That would have been kind of fun. It was, I call the Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade moment, where they're going through the tunnel with the rats, and there's like a picture of the Ark of the Covenant, and the Allison Duty character is like, is that the Ark of the Covenant? And Indy goes, yeah. It's like, are you sure? Pretty sure. And I thought that would have been kind of funny if there was like a book that she pulled out that said something like the Data Chronicles, or just something kind of funny, that would have had done a little callback to something.
The Alice in Wonderland book, the first edition.
Yeah. Exactly. Something like that. That would have, something would have been great to pull us back into like some pop culture. I just felt they missed out on an opportunity like that.
Ooh, the first edition of Alice. Oh yeah, that would have been good.
Exactly. Something like that. That would have been kind of just a little nod to library lovers, because the thing that was cool about this episode is this actually jumped on a cool trope that I like about movies and TV, is the scene when you're on an adventure or a treasure hunt and you have to go to the library because you're not going to find what you need anywhere else, or the hidden book that has something in it. There's always so many cool movie scenes and tropes in libraries for whatever reason, whether it's the 80s high school drama or something like that. There's always the library scene. And I like that they went to that with this and had some fun with it.
Yeah. Have you been to the Huntington Library?
No, I haven't. Is that good?
Okay, Kevin, you need to go because it's just down the road from me in Pasadena. And when they were describing like the books and like the rare books and stuff, it totally reminded me of visiting the Huntington Library. And I'm not really a big book person. I'm a math person. And to answer your question, Kevin, when I do go into a bookstore, my first go-to is the math section. I love seeing what new math books there are. And then I'll go to the religious section. And then I'll go to try and find my Star Trek books. So that's
the math section would be the last place I would hit.
No way. I've got so many cool books there. Anyways, so listening to them talk about, seeing these rare books totally took me back to Huntington Library because there is editions of the Bible and like these first printed from what was the printing press? It starts with a G, not Gettysburg. Anyways, there are a lot of rare books.
That's where our history is preserved, is those rare books.
So it reminded me of that. And if anyone has a chance, I know it's a weird thing to do, but go to the Huntington Library and view these ancient books.
That's awesome.
That's very cool. Okay, guys, with that, it's time to get ready to close out this show. So let's intercept some subspace signals. Okay, guys, and of course, when we are intercepting our subspace signals, we always manage to land on the Orb of Prophecy, where we're looking forward to next week's episode 9, Larange Point. A little brief synopsis. After Maul and the Breen capture a mysterious structure that contains the progenitor's power, Captain Burnham must lead a covert mission to retrieve it before the Breen figure out how to use it. And of course, that's a little bit of a plot point that was hanging from this episode, where Burnham gets a piece of information that only she has to unlock this technology.
Yeah. So why does the Breen have it?
Because the Breen got the clue. They did give the Breen the clue at the end of the episode.
I know, but then why I guess I'm just not understanding. What is it? What is the power?
Well, it's the progenitor's, whatever the structure is that the Breen have discovered, because they probably got there first. Because if you remember, Discovery was pretty damaged at the end of the episode.
But they're not sure how to use the information, but Burnham does.
They don't have the whatever Burnham was told by the AI is the key to unlocking it. Okay. So that's
I'm so confused.
But a few images. We've got see some Breen, and look at this.
There better be a marriage coming up.
Yeah. And of course Burnham as well. So we know Saru's coming back. So here's my ultimate wish for this in this episode is that not only does Saru come back, but he comes back with Osawa and Oo and Detmer, and they're coming back with that Enterprise all fixed up with 30-second the new technology. That would be so. I think that would just be awesome.
The one they found. That'd be
the Mirror Universe version of the Enterprise. I think that would just be incredible.
I like it. I like that.
That would be fun. But guys, it has been a wonderful episode to talk about. We got some rare. Maybe someday this particular podcast will go in an archive. Who knows? But this is the Union Federation podcast on the Fandom Podcast Network and on the BQN networks. As far as the Fandom Podcast Network goes, of course, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, we greatly appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, and share it out. And of course, you can hear all of our audio podcasts on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com or any of your major podcast catchers out there. Kevin, where can people find you on social media these days?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, X, Threads, Letterboxd, and of course, Oh, what's that newfangled one there? Discord, yes, at Spartan_Phoenix. Still trying to figure out how to use Discord effectively, so I'm gonna have to hit up Amy later for some tips. Because apparently, Amy, you've mastered the art of Discord.
So fun.
And of course, you can find me, Kyle, all over the Fandom Podcast Network as well. We've got some great stuff getting ready to come out. In fact, we recorded a very fun couch potato theater just last night that I'm looking forward to putting out here in the next week or so, because we did the movie The Losers, and it's one of my all-time favorite films.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Great cast. You have Idris Elba, Chris Evans, Zoe Saldana, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Jason Patric. It is a loaded, underrated film from 2010.
What is the name of it?
The Losers, based on a DC comic book.
Huh.
Yeah. It's very fun, and it's one of those great movies, except where like everybody in it, except maybe for Zoe, had not quite hit that full blow up superstar level yet. So it's a lot of fun.
To put things into perspective, when this movie came out, Chris Evans was filming his first Captain America.
Oh.
So, with that too, again, you can find me, Kyle, on Twitter or X at Kyle W. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Kyle Fandom. You can find me, of course, all over Facebook. You can find me on Discord at Kyle W. And also, you can find me on Letterboxd at KSport16. But of course, too, we have our wonderful friends over at the BQN. And Amy, I know you're trying to keep them all in line over there because they're a party bunch over there. I think you sneak them all the Romulan ale anyway. But where can people find you and the BQN?
Yeah, well, you can search Union Federation and subscribe there. I'm also co-hosting All Good Things, which covers all of Star Trek, and we do little series and like tropes, if you will. Really am having a good time there. And if you become a patron of BQN, I do little math moments, which there is going to be a math moment from this episode, Labyrinth, when Burnham talks about the algorithm to solve a maze. That obviously is math. And
you must have been like going, yes, math, go, math, go.
I know. I love it.
I love that. I love that about you. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. On Discord, find me, Amy Nelson 522.
Guys, as always, it's been a pleasure to discuss this last season of Discovery. It's an utter joy. We only got 2 left, and I think we're in for a wild ride in these last 2 episodes. A lot can happen. It's going to be very interesting to see. And also, thank you to all of our wonderful listeners out there. We can't do this without you. You make everything worthwhile, and you make it so much fun for us to do this podcast and talk all these things. We know Discovery's coming to an end soon, but we still have a lot of other things to look forward to, including Prodigy season 2, the final season of Lower Decks. We're going to have some flashback talks about Next Generation and some Orville stuff planned, because it's time to get back into the Union a little bit. We haven't done that in a while, and we missed that, and we missed the P corner. Come on, let's be honest. But until then, we will be back next week to discuss episode 9 of Star Trek Discovery. And for now, hailing frequencies are now closed.